Okay. So we're cooking. We go to our questions for today. A number of you by now should have received the DVD of the PBS pilot, and we should know in a few days to a week or so about airing dates. So we'll let you know that as we know it, and we will put it up on the website. But right now we don't know. It seems that there's always something else to wait for, isn't there? I'm going to read this next question in whole and then in parts. I recently helped transport my granddaughter Holly and some friends to see the Nutcracker, and Holly rode in the front seat. Usually she's in the back. When I took her and her brother to the movies on Saturday, she got in the front seat. I didn't know if that was a new privilege now that she's 9. I didn't feel comfortable with it, but because I wanted her approval, I let her stay up front. After we came back, I found out that she had been told not to ride up front, but had not told me. She was scolded by her mother and made to apologize to me. I didn't feel comfortable with that either, but sort of felt like it wasn't my business to interfere. I already felt like I'd messed up, so I kept quiet. How could I have handled it better? And then there was an added clarification. My daughter-in-law was taking 11 girls to the Nutcracker. I took 4 in my car. She took the rest in her large SUV. Holly was up in front, and there were 3 others in back. So let's start over. I helped transport my daughter Holly to see the Nutcracker. Holly rode in the front seat. There were 3 in the back. I took her and her brothers to the movies, and she got in the front seat. I didn't know if it was a new privilege now that she's 9. And I'm hearing you feel guilty about this. And I'm going, quit it. I mean, so what? Why should you know? Why should you have to figure out whether her changing seats is the end of the world? She's 9 years old, not 1 and pre-verbal. She's 9. So if there's something she was supposed to communicate to you, then that would be her responsibility. So you did not make a mistake. And here I can just hear the guilt just oozing through the page. So you shouldn't have to have thought of a thing. This is nothing. I didn't feel comfortable with it, but because I wanted her approval, I let her stay up front. You know, I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that you're doing this I wanted her approval thing later on to kind of take more responsibility than really is yours. Because you're thinking about all this now after you've analyzed it in light of later facts. I doubt that you went through all this at the time. The kid got in the front seat. You were glad to see her there next to you. What's to think about? You don't go through it. This isn't the cockpit of a 767. You know, you don't go through, okay, left seat, right seat, who belongs next to me? The kid sat down next to you, and you turned on the car, and you took off. You wanted to make sure she was belted in, but big deal. You wouldn't have attached all that meaning to a child sitting in the front seat at the time. It's just a seat. But then later on, when your daughter-in-law comes along and starts, attacking the child, now all the safety and trading of imitation love, then it becomes really complicated. But only once the attacking starts and the scurrying for safety begins. Don't make things too complicated at the time. After we came back, I found See, after we came back, I found that she had been told not to ride up front, but hadn't told me. So, you learned the truth later. Big deal. Not your problem. The child manipulated you because you didn't know the rules. Well, kids do that. When you don't know their limits, when you don't know what's supposed to go on, they will trick you. And I mean, that's kind of what kids do. It's almost like their job. Why wouldn't they? In fact, as you were talking about this, I'm going, what's the big deal? I didn't even get the point of this. So I looked it up on the internet and found out that kids aren't supposed to sit in the front seat, belted, until they're 12. I didn't even know what you were talking about. Because, see, my grandkids are 0 and 2 and 6 and 4. So mine haven't gotten old enough to the point where they start tricking me into sitting in the front seat yet, see? Well, this wasn't your job to figure out. So she was scolded by her mother and made to apologize to me. Now, see, this gets really complicated. All right, so she was scolded, which is just shaming and really kind of dumb and inappropriate. It was wrong. Scolding a child because the child makes a mistake is ineffective. All you need to do is turn to the child and say, so where were you supposed to sit? That's all you have to say. And then the child goes, I was supposed to sit in the back. We're done. It's all over. What role does the scolding have? All the scolding does is make this child feel absolutely miserable and unloved. There's no role for it at all. None. No positive role. And then apologize to you? What for? What's the role of that? Because it makes the mother look good. Actually, it makes the mother look ridiculous. But that was the idea of it. It makes the mother look more responsible. But the child didn't do you any wrong. So apologize to you for what? It's all about making the mother look good. So the child tricked you. What did the child take from you? Your integrity? $20? Nothing? Not a thing. There's no reason for the child to apologize to you. You said I didn't feel comfortable with that either, but sort of felt like it wasn't my business to interfere. I already felt like I'd messed up, so I kept quiet. Now, it is not appropriate to correct the mother in front of the child. You wouldn't say to the mother, well, you know, what a horse's butt you are to, scold your child in front of me. That's not going to go over very well. So you just stand there and you let the scolding take place. But when the mother says, now, apologize to your grandmother. Well, see, now you just got invited into the discussion, didn't you? You did. Now you just got invited to speak. Because now the child says to you, Grandma, I apologize. Well, now something is expected for you to say something. So now you get to open your mouth. And now you get to have some fun. You don't want to correct the mom, but you can say something very cool. You get to say, you get to make light of it. You get to say something like, oh, so you tried to get away with the crime of sitting in the front seat, did you? And we all know the penalty for that. Make fun of the thing. You might ask the child, so do we all know what the current penalty for that is? Is it 3 to 5 years? Is it a severe beating? Do we have to take you out back and feed you to the dogs? You don't think the child isn't going to catch on that you're making fun of the whole thing? The kid will. The kid's going to catch on that you're loving the kid. This is your chance to love the child. It's huge. Then you can also take what the child did seriously and teach a principle. So you do the loving, but you also do the teaching. Love and teach. Then you say to the child, so, tell me why you did that. Why did you sit in the front seat? Children need to explain why they did it, because usually they're never asked that. Why did you do that? They're just beaten up emotionally, and the kid's going to go, oh, I don't know what you say. You just wanted to sit with me, didn't you? Well, duh. But help the child say it. And you say, and I understand why you would want to do that, but it has been shown that, and what you do is go to the computer. Do something fun with the kid. Nobody ever explains anything to a kid. They just pound them emotionally. Go to the computer like I did, and you learn that a child who sits in the back seat, a child who sits in the front seat, seatbelted at any age, is 29% more likely to incur serious injury than a child who sits in the back seat. That's why it's recommended that children up to age 12 should sit in the back seat, whether they're belted or not, no matter what car they sit in. And so you show the child that's why. Because what happens is, and there's whole articles written on it, when this thing comes out, and explain the whole thing, that this balloon that comes out of the front there, take her out to the car. Show her where this thing comes out. It comes out at 400 miles an hour. It's like a train. And that it's been shown to injure kids. So instead of making her feel bad, explain the why. This kid will love it that you took the time. So see what a difference this is? You're loving and teaching instead of shaming and scolding. You think the kid won't pick up on the difference between that and what her mother just did without you delineating the difference? Sure she will. Very cool teaching opportunity for you. Somebody said, what if the child's decision resulted in a traffic citation for the driver? How much is the child's responsibility and what part is the adult's? If in this case, if the child's decision resulted in a traffic citation and the child was 9 years old and the child pulled one over on the adult and the adult really didn't know what the rules were, then what you would do is you would discuss, so whose responsibility will this be? In this case, frankly, the person who has to pay for the fine, in my view, you would need to discuss this. But the person who's responsible for the child's behavior is, boy, mom's going to hate this, it's the mother. Because the mother should have explained this rule to the grandmother. 9-year-olds aren't legally responsible for their behavior. Their parents are. So if the mother was that hyped up that somebody should have known about the decision to not sit in the front, the mother should have explained this behavior to the grandmother before the kid ever sat in the car. That's who is responsible. And then there should be a discussion about who's responsible for the fine. My guess is that this mother who shames a child probably would tend not to take responsibility for the fine, but because that's the way victims operate. Victims blame everyone else. They'll blame a 9-year-old child rather than take responsibility for themselves. But that's up to the victim. You can't make them take responsibility. Didn't the child lie by omission, thus the need to apologize for deliberately misleading the dad? Yeah, the child did lie. But why does the child have to apologize for that? The child simply describes the child's behavior. The child didn't hurt. This was a grandmother that the child did this to. The child didn't hurt the grandmother in any way. We have this misconception that if the child tells the grandmother a lie, now she must apologize for telling a lie. Why is that? Apologize for what? She didn't hit her. She just says, Grandma, I lied to you. I should have told you that, I wasn't allowed to sit in the front seat. That was my mistake. But apologize for what? She didn't harm her. We are absolutely convinced that somehow if a child does something wrong, they have unrighted the scales of justice, which of course we hold, and that the child must apologize in order to right those scales. And where did we learn this? From our parents. Vicky says it's the adult's responsibility to know the laws. The grandmother is responsible to know the laws. And I don't agree. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't have even known such a law existed. As I was reading this story, how did I know that there was such a law? So it's easy to say, you should have known the law. Okay? How did I know? How would I know to look it up? How would I even know to ask? So, for example, if some of you, for example, were to enter into business with me in Real Love, there are intellectual property laws that you are absolutely unaware of, completely unaware. If, as you were working with me, you were to transgress one of those property laws, what if I were to come down on you and say, oh, let's say you should have known that? Well, no, I wouldn't do that to you. I would say, let me explain that law to you, instead of should have known. Should have is so unuseful. The fact is, she did not know. And it doesn't help her to know to say she should have known. How would Grandma know this? Until she wrote this letter to me, I was utterly unaware of this. Oh, and by the way, it's not a law, at least in Georgia. It's not a law that a child under the age of 12 has to sit in the back. It's simply a recommendation. So it's not a law in the first place. So that pretty much gets rid of that question. It's not a law at all. In a dating situation, when both people want to spend as much time together as they can, when does it become clinging? Pretty easy. When you can't quit. Getting and protecting behaviors are addictive behaviors. So if I want to spend, same with pretty much all the uses of getting and protecting behaviors and all the uses of imitation love, anything pleasurable. If somebody has a life filled with real love and they, for example, enjoy playing a video game, and you walk into the room and you simply turn off the video game and say, I'd like to speak to you, then they'll say, well, okay, what would you like to talk about? Whereas somebody who's using video games in an addictive way will become angry every time. Well, it's pretty clear that they were using it in an addictive way. If you are clinging to someone and they attempt to pull away, what will happen? You will cling harder. That's how you tell. It's really kind of obvious. So if you're not clinging and somebody attempts to pull away, you'll simply let them. You'll let them make their decision, and you'll enjoy the time that they offer you. This is a question that we've dealt with a number of times, but it'll come up over and over. And that is, people say, well, anger's a healthy emotion. Well, I don't see how you could say that. Whatever is healthy would contribute to our happiness. I've never seen a single instance where myself or anybody else has been angry and it's contributed to their feeling unconditionally loved or being unconditionally loving or being genuinely happy. They then retort, well, but anger is natural. It is natural, and so is snake venom. It is natural, but what is natural is not necessarily good. Cow dung is natural, but I don't serve it up on a plate and eat it. Anybody having a hard time with this metaphor? Yes, it is natural, but that doesn't mean that I should indulge in it. Or people will say, I have a right to express it. You certainly do. You have a right to be as unhappy as you wish. You can express anger all your life. Now, can anger be expressed in a healthy way? Not really. What we can do, however, is we can express anger in healthier and healthier ways. We can express anger in less destructive ways. So you're in a conversation with your wife and you're angry because of some situation that you're in over something she's done. You could punch her in the face, scream at her that she's a witch, and blame her for every unhappiness in your life. You think I'm exaggerating. This has been done by many people. That's one way to express your anger. You could wait. You could shut your mouth for a moment. You could call a wise person and say, I'm being crazy again. I'm not being loving. I'm about to blow up and kill this woman and blame her for all the unhappiness in my life. Now, the second way is still not loving, but it's a lot healthier than the first way. So, is there a completely healthy way to be angry? No. But is the second way a great deal healthier than the first way? Yeah. Yeah. And I don't ever tell people, don't be angry. So I hear this a lot when people say to me, so you're saying don't be angry? Not at all. No, not a bit. In fact, in any given situation, being angry may be the best you can do. Calling up a wise person and exploding over the phone, or stepping outside and screaming may be a whole lot better than, say, pulling a gun and killing the person you're angry at. I applaud you, in fact, for getting angry in the first way as opposed to the second way. See? So we can learn some much better ways to express our anger, but over time, as we feel more unconditionally loved and as we feel more unconditionally loving, gradually, bit by bit, real love replaces anger. It really does. And the people who say, well, I have a right to be angry, simply haven't seen real love replace anger enough times to believe that it's possible. That's all. If I look for a wedding band on a man's hand, is that a getting and protecting behavior? Not necessarily. It depends on why you're looking. If I'm a woman and I'm attending a singles event, or if I'm well, not necessarily a singles event. If I'm simply out at a social function, then looking at a man's hand to see if he's married would be simply the gathering of information. It would be smart. So it depends on why you're looking. It's all about motivation. So if you have more questions about that, let me know. This question is, I'm experiencing trust and jealousy issues with my husband. How can I work to overcome this? I'm actively involved with learning the principles of real love, and my husband is not. It would help if you told me what the trust and jealousy is about. So what is it that you don't trust him over? And then I'll come back to your question. Angela says, so someone says, if I had a gun right now, I'd kill myself. I'm so miserable that I want to die. I personally don't panic anymore when I hear that, but other people expect me to react like I would have before real love. What can I say to them and or to the person who is so upset that they want to die? So if somebody says that I'm so miserable, I want to die, why would they say that? They would say it because they don't feel loved. Period. It's the only reason people get that unhappy. And we have to pay attention to that, to the reason for their speaking. But what we tend to do is we're not listening to them. Instead, we're more worried about ourselves. We're more worried about, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What am I going to do so I don't look bad, so that I'm not out of control, so that I don't get blamed for this, so that this doesn't reflect badly on me? That's what people react to. It is. And so they immediately respond with, okay, I've got to do something to fix this. So imagine that you come to me and you say, I'm so miserable, I want to die. And I immediately go, oh, okay, we better call the police. We better go to the emergency room. What am I telling you? I'm telling you that primarily I'm concerned about me, not you. I'm telling you that there's something hugely defective about you. You're already in a state of emptiness and fear, and I'm responding to you with what? Emptiness and fear. So even though it looks like I'm concerned, what am I doing? I'm making it worse. We have to listen. All this person is really saying is, I'm really, really feeling unloved. I'm at the end of the I don't feel loved spectrum. I may end my life over this. So what I would say to that person is, well, I can sure understand why you might want to kill yourself. There are sure plenty of situations, plenty of circumstances, plenty of conditions in this life that would lead people to feel bad enough to want to die. I've said that a number of times. Now, if I say that to you, in that moment, what are you going to hear? You're going to hear, he's listening to me. He's paying attention to me. He cares about me. And he's not panicking. He's meeting my emptiness and fear with peace. You think that's not going to make a difference? I can't think of a single time that somebody has come to me with, I think I want to die, that I've responded in that way, that things haven't improved. Quickly improved. Then you say, so I can understand why you'd feel that way. Would you tell me what's going on in your life that's led you to this place where you feel like that? And now what you've done is you've invited them to share who they are with you so that you can what? Not fix them, so you can love them. And as they tell you what's led them to that place, you don't open your mouth every time they say something like, well, my boyfriend's left me. We open our mouths way too soon. My boyfriend's left me. Oh, that's no big deal. That'll pass. I watch people respond to these things, and I'm thinking, well, that was a little fast. They want you to listen to them. That's what they want. They don't need you to fix them. People who are at the end of their ropes wanting to kill themselves are not flat tires. They're not. They don't need you just to stick bubble gum on them and blow them up really quickly. It's a little more than that. So you listen. My boyfriend's left me. My job stinks. My parents don't care about me. Keep listening. There's more. And on and on and on. And as they tell you these details, what do each of these details really mean? You already know the answer. Because often they don't. To them, it seems like an endless array of unconnected facts, which is one of the reasons that they feel so lost and alone. So here they've got these unconnected things. Lost my job, boyfriend's left me, parents don't care about me, see, my mother's trying to control me, my dad's critical. It looks utterly confusing. So rather than respond to all these things individually, you translate them for them. And at the end of however long it takes to listen, it might take 5 minutes, it might take 2 hours. Only you can know. You're the one there, not me. You say, wow, it sounds like there are a whole lot of people in your life who haven't cared about you. This might be the first time this person's ever heard that translation and ever understood that that's what all that means. Many people, when I've said that, have just wept understanding that for the first time. Because now they get it. They get why it hurts. And if they don't get it, you explain it to them. You say, so it's little wonder that you'd be in so much pain. Since what we want more than anything else is to feel loved. And you haven't been. And you take it from there. When people feel heard like that, it makes a huge difference. Huge. Now, if after talking to them for 20 minutes or however long you've got, they say, they get real specific. Now I'm going to go home and open a pack of razor blades and cut my wrist till I die, and they get real specific, then I'd step in with an intervention and say, why don't I go home with you? Then you might actually step in and call the police. I've never had to do that in all these years. If you actually listen to people, you can make a really big difference in their lives. Never once had to intervene like that. An ex-girlfriend called my husband at 4:30 a.m., always a welcome treat, and text messaged him at 8:30 p.m. She seemed surprised that he was married after learning he was divorced. My husband says he hasn't spoken to this woman in 4 years. This is the one that was talking about the trust and jealousy. So why should it matter to me when he text messaged her that he was remarried and that he loved his wife but loved his son more? Why would that bother you? Well, of course it bothers you, because every spouse wants to be the most important person to her partner. Of course it bothers you. We all want to be the one to our partner. And ideally, that's how it should be. So, trusting your partner with this ex-girlfriend doesn't sound like much of an issue. I mean, she was just some voice from the past going, hey, Billy, are you available? And he's going, no. Well, that's nothing. What bothered you was hearing him say that he loves you, but he loves his son more. And that would sting pretty much any spouse, because you want to be the kind of the jewel of the crown. But it isn't that way. So you can feel jealous and you can feel annoyed about how things are not, or you can feel grateful for what you have. And the only way that you're going to change the way things are is to learn more about unconditional love. Because remember, he doesn't even know what it is. So in the world of imitation love, he's going to naturally do this more than less than thing. He has known his son longer than you. longer, he has more invested in his son than you, and very likely gets a more consistent supply of imitation love from his son than you. So guess what? That means that he thinks he loves his son more than you, which in his world, in a field of death, is probably true. But what kind of love is it? Garbage. So if you want to be jealous that he loves his son with more garbage love, then you can be jealous all the rest of the day. But it's meaningless. Do you understand? It's a really immature kind of love. The thing to focus on is learning more about real love or unconditional love and learning to bring that into your relationship and seeing what happens. Because right now, he doesn't even know what love is. So when he says he loves his son more, so what? It's the assessment of a 14-year-old. Let me know if that makes sense to you. Question. If I'm really practicing unconditional love, why would it matter whether a man has a wedding band on or not? Well, it would still matter. You don't want to date somebody who's married. That's just practical. I mean, unconditional love has nothing to do with the fact that when I get into a car, I want to know what the engine works. Yeah? When I get on a plane, I want to know that they did their latest safety checks. When you're dating, you want to know whether the man you're dating is married or not. It's just useful information. Or that he is, now this matters. Or that he is uglier, poorer, less intelligent, less eloquent, handicapped than another guy in the room. All right, those things are less important. Physical appearance would have a whole lot less to do with unconditional love. But whether he's married or not, that's pretty important. Why would you date somebody who's already in a relationship with somebody else? Is that making more sense? And some of the other things also do matter because we're not perfect human beings. It's hard enough to carry on a loving relationship under the best of circumstances because we're all learning to be loving. So if you're entering into a relationship with somebody who is handicapped, for example, you would have to go into that realizing that there are going to be some difficulties there that wouldn't be there in other relationships. That doesn't mean don't go into the relationships. It just means realize that there are going to be some difficulties that wouldn't exist in other relationships. Just like entering into an interracial relationship. Nothing wrong with doing that, but it will be harder in some respects. Like marrying somebody who doesn't speak the same language you do, as in language like English, French. I'd never tell somebody don't, but that would have to be a difficult step. So some things do matter in choosing a partner. This is the lady who was talking about taking a call from somebody who was threatening to kill themselves. I was talking to my niece who was talking about her brother, and I handled the call pretty much like you said, but she expects me to react the imitation way, and I don't. And then I feel like an alien, of course. See, in today's society, everything is gauged according to the ways of imitation love. And if you really care about somebody, then you'll get all hands in the air, dramatic. Oh, no. Oh, don't kill yourself. In fact, you'll even say incredibly stupid things like, oh, no, don't say things like that. You're actually supposed to say that to somebody who threatens to kill themselves. Oh, don't talk like that. Well, can anybody see how stupid that is? So I can accept you if you're not trying to kill yourself, but if you are trying to kill yourself, I can't accept you like that. Well, that's how they got the way they are. And we do this to people everywhere we go. The ways of imitation love are incredibly complicated. And it drives people away from us, and then we wonder how they get to the place where they want to kill themselves. Here's a note from a coach. It's kind of an amalgam of more than one note, so you have to kind of hang on to this. Hang on to your seats. Trying to change the names here, but a coach who said, I received a call today from Susie, a lady who has a daughter who is, I don't remember the age, 12, I think. She wanted to take her daughters out to eat, but one daughter wasn't interested in going. Susie insisted because she didn't wish to leave her home alone, so she continued to visit. The daughter, the 12-year-old, became even more insistent upon not going out to eat and locked herself in her room and turned up the radio to drown out the mother. We all know where this went. Susie told her daughter to turn down the volume or she would come in and turn it down for her. Predictably, the daughter turned the volume up even louder. So as Susie began to open the door, the daughter threw the door open and began to beat and kick her mother no less than 20 times. The mother didn't strike back, did the best she could to defend herself. A doctor came over, a friend of the family, to examine Susie and confirmed there were no broken bones, just severe bruising. And she asked what course she should take. The daughter, the 12-year-old, is claiming that the mother gave her no choice. So the 12-year-old is saying, what, me? This isn't my fault. You made me beat you. Typical victim response. Victims are never at fault. The daughter shows no remorse for injuring someone because she insists that she was not at fault. The daughter doesn't believe that screaming that her mother at her mother as a witch with a B is wrong. The daughter is also angry at her father for some things he did, and so they talked about what needed to be done. The coach agreed that her daughter was not feeling loved in general, but especially when Susie was trying to force her daughter to go out when she'd already expressed a desire to stay at home. I helped Susie see that this was yet another power struggle over choices, and it was far more for Susie's convenience and safety concerns, and that she'd always had arguments with her children whenever she tried to force them to do anything. I suggested that Susie consider filing a criminal complaint with the police department for domestic violence, given the extent of the injuries and the remorseless attitude of her daughter. However, taking into account the reasons for her daughter's long-standing anger, we came up with an alternative option. Voluntarily participating in extensive real love coaching for the next 6 to 12 months, or allow the juvenile criminal justice system to decide which therapist she'd be forced to see as a condition of her probation. The daughter chose to participate in real love probation and is now coaching with a real love coach. No more physical attacks would be allowed. I also suggested that the other daughter help the mother photograph all the bruising, not only to document this assault, but to show both daughters that such behavior could not be tolerated. Any suggestions? So the 9th principle of parenting is that children are happy when they are responsible, which is balanced with they must also feel loved, which is the first principle of parenting. Interesting that they are first and last, huh? That they're like bookends. The photographs of the mother have to happen immediately, like same day. And the photographs have to be taken as a joint effort between the mother and the offending daughter. This is evidence of a crime. The daughter has actually committed a pursuable crime. And the child has to understand that if she doesn't complete her probation with a coach and all the things that are being prescribed for her, she'll be prosecuted. That's what I do. We have to love our children, but children who believe that they can get away with anything that they want to turn into little terrors. They believe that the world is there to serve them, and they become eventually unreachable victims. They believe that they have an inherent right to abuse other people. And once they get to that point, there isn't anything you can do to teach them. Susie has to require a very strict regimen of counseling and from a real love coach. and she has to require the daughter to pay for it. This has to cost the daughter something. Or once again, there's no consequence for the daughter's behavior. Also, within the next 2 to 4 weeks, the daughter has to be able to write a 1,500-word essay on why she did what she did to her mother, why it was wrong, so why she did it, why it was wrong, and what she's going to do to prevent something like this from ever happening again. Now, on her own, there's no way she could ever write that essay, which means that she's going to have to read the Real Love book. Without reading it, there's no way she could come up with these ideas on her own. If she chooses to break the law again by hitting her mother or her sister, if she steals the car, the family car, or runs away, or stays out after curfew, if she does anything that breaks the terms of her agreement here that she's going to put in writing with her mother, then the consequences will be that the mother will take this to the juvenile courts and will prosecute both what she does this time and what she did in beating her mother. If the child doesn't like the rules that they keep at home, then she can find out whether she likes the rules that they keep down at the, every state calls it a different thing, the YDC, the Youth Detention Center, or jail. They all call it different things. But teaching a child responsibility is absolutely imperative. A child cannot be happy without being responsible. What she did was against the law. So she's got to do her homework. She's got to show up for the calls with her coach. She's got to do all this stuff. And the mother has to do her homework. She also has to have a coach. She has to organize and execute daily family meetings. And then make sure that the children are taught these principles. She has to read out of the Real Love and Parenting book every day for 10 to 15 minutes and describe the things that she has done wrong. But she's also got to be willing to show the girls the things that they've done wrong. This is what's going on here is an emergency. And if the mother doesn't take this seriously, this kid is headed for really just terrible consequences. Many parents are not willing to take this seriously. But if the parents aren't willing to love and teach, then what will happen is society will simply teach. They won't do the love part. They'll just teach with consequences, and society doesn't care. They'll just beat up on the kid, and if the kid bleeds, well, it doesn't matter. Kids say, well, I hate it here at home. Great. Go down to the youth detention center and see if you like it there. We have feedback from the coach that to date the pictures have not been taken. If the daughter is in fear of if the mother is in fear of the angry daughter, then the kid's doomed. If parents are not willing to love and teach the children, then the children are just going to run wild, and they're screwed. It's horrifying what these kids turn into. I get to see them when they're older, when now they're not teachable by anybody, and then they go to jail, and they spend the rest of their lives there. Jill was saying, I was listening to your answer, and it just makes so much sense when you say that it doesn't matter to get more imitation love or get less. What is more important is real love. I heard my daughter, 17-year-old, telling me that she did not want to get close to me and did not trust me. And I was feeling sad about it. Now I understand that it's perfectly fine because she's not getting enough real love from me. I was giving her imitation love, and I wasn't knowing any better than that. Feeling sad over losing the effect of imitation love is silly. What Jill just said is brilliant. Feeling sad that we're losing garbage is ridiculous. We have to focus on filling our lives with what matters, not focusing over grieving over losing nothing. She continues, I can start loving her again with the new knowledge I have, and it needs time to build the trust again. Brilliant. This daughter, if the mother doesn't grow a spine, this could be pretty terrifying, because this child will run roughshod over the mother. And what the child learns is that there are no laws, that there are no laws in the universe, that there's no law of happiness, that there are no laws of responsibility, that love isn't governed by laws. Now, does anybody get even a sense of how dangerous a world this child lives in? And it's all because of the lack of courage of the mother. And all because the mother is afraid of losing the approval of the child. Well, how selfish. How utterly selfish for a parent to make it all about the parent. So I'm going to destroy my child all because I'm not willing to experience a little discomfort. Well, you have the right to do that, but you do a bigger disservice to your child than you can possibly imagine. I live with my parents due to circumstances, a recent divorce that leaves myself and 2 young daughters with no other options. My parents do so much for me and my girls, for which I'm grateful. However, my mother, who is a counselor, insists on telling me how to live my life. They basically treat me as a teenager. I'm 23. For now, I must live there, but I feel stuck. How do I stop my parents from treating me as a child? You stop behaving like one. So your choices are very simple. You got to grow a spine too. And so you only got a handful of choices that are available to you. You have to make a decision. You either, because you're in circumstances where you have to take their help, you know your mother better than anybody else. If your mother's going to keep this up no matter what, then you have to decide, am I willing to put up with her talking to me like this and controlling me? And am I willing to live with that at the price of her supporting us during this brief period of time? You have to decide. Or am I willing to take a risk? Am I willing to go to my mother and say, but see, you then have to live with the consequences of this decision? Am I willing to go to my mother and say, Mother, I'm 23 years old, and I have 2 daughters. When you raised me, you were the mother, and you made the decisions regarding me. Now that I'm the mother, I'm going to make the decisions regarding my children. I regret that I need your physical help during this brief period of time, but I don't want the suggestions about how to live my life or how to raise my children. So if you're going to continue to make the suggestions to me about how to live my life, I'll have to move out. So, mother, here's your choice. You don't have to stop, but you can either stop making the suggestions, and I'll stay here and live with you during this brief period of time until I can get back on my feet. You can stop, and I'll stay. Or you can keep making the suggestions, and I will immediately leave. In which case, we'll live in a homeless shelter. I would rather live in a homeless shelter than live here with all the advice. But you have to decide ahead of time whether you're willing to walk out if she does it. And I can't make that decision for you. Or are you willing to live in this controlling hell while she does this during the time when you need the physical help? I don't know. I can't make that choice for you. But do you understand what I'm saying? You can't do this choice, which is live with her, accept her help, and complain about it. That's not a reasonable choice. So make a choice. Live with it and like it, or leave it. But living with it and hating it is just making everybody unhappy. And yeah, that'd be a tough choice. But you got to pick. we've only got 3 minutes. So rather than start something and then do somebody a disservice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back next Tuesday. We'll start right in with the questions that are up on the board now. It's been a delight. Golly, you guys have kept me just flying. And we'll come back and start with these. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Till then, we love you. See you then.